Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight. We are going to be doing a webinar with Kristie Camp. Kristie Camp is a doctorate candidate, and she's also a teacher at, I never remember which exactly school it is.
It's
It's
Gaffney High School.
Gaffney High School, there it is in South Carolina. And she's going to be talking with us a little bit about environmental literacy and particularly focused on outdoors literacy. Just to remind everybody, the webinars are sponsored by Literacy in the Discipline 612. We are funded by a grant from the South Carolina Middle Grades Initiative. And so please make sure that you check out our website, which is literacy6-12.org. And I think that pretty much is it. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is turn that over to Ms. Camp and let her share with us all of that she knows about outdoor literacy.
Thank you so much, Dr. Morrison. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm honored to be here. I want to give a shout out to Dr. Morrison. She was one of my advisors at Carolina, and I did an internship with her, and I've learned so much from her. I appreciate you asking me to share today. So I'm going to start. Let me share my screen. And yes, I have taught for 26 years at Gaffney High School, and Gaffney High School is Gaffney as a town is a little bit south of Charlotte, a little bit east of Asheville, if you know those areas. And if you ever watched House of Cards, that is where President Frank Underwood is from with the big peach water tower. That's where I live and work. So we're going to talk about environmental literacy and do we need to take this outside? And of course, you know that I'm going to say, yes, let's take this outside. But what I thought we would do first, I want you to look at some of the headlines, some things that I've pulled off my social media just in the last week or so. Well, there it goes. Oh, that was last one. Okay. Those, like I said, those are just a few that I've pulled off very quickly as I'm scrolling through my social media. And what you can see is that they are full of the challenges we face as teachers in 2024. And I'm not about to claim that taking students outside are going to solve all this. But what I am going to claim is that taking students outside provides experiential learning, shared experiences, opportunities for conversations, and openings for learning about the earth and our relationship to it and exploring that. And on top of it all, it happens to be quite good for us. So let's start with some definitions. What do I mean when I say environmental literacy? Make sure. Okay. Let's start with first what it means to be an environmentally literate individual. That's someone that has knowledge, skills, and understanding of environmental principles, of course. They also have the motivation to conserve natural resources and the ability and willingness to make informed decisions about personal choices and the impact that those personal choices have on the environment. That person also has the skills to respond effectively to environmental challenges. And they also have the ability to discern accurate information and reliable sources about environmental needs. And then, because they're able to understand that, the next step is communicating the reasoning for their ethical choices or about the environment. the thing about environmental literacy is that it's not just an individual endeavor. It's not just about me becoming environmentally literate. As I become more environmentally literate, I also become more community minded. So environmental literacy within the community means the ability to act with others who in addressing some of the challenges and supporting ethical and healthy decisions for today and for the future, and the ability to engage in civic life for the good of all living things. But some other aspects of environmental literacy I think we need to consider is the need to explore our emotional dispositions toward the environment, our affective connections, and those come from our experiences in nature from childhood on, and it also comes from our cultural upbringing. Those play into the way we respond to environmental challenges. And it's also not just a single acquisition, like you get the certificate that says now I'm environmentally literate. It's more of like a continuum. And the more environmentally literate we become, the more equipped we are to make ethical and effective decisions regarding the environment. And it's broader than climate literacy. It absolutely includes climate literacy, but climate literacy is dealing specifically with global climate change. But environmental literacy includes all the events and all the ways humans interact with the natural world, and the way that all creatures are affected by that interaction. And the sources for all this you see listed here, and I have a list of the references that you'll get at the end. Okay, so let's start with how environmentally literate are our students right now. But I thought we ought to start with ourselves. We need to examine our own environmental literacy. So I have this little quick quiz from Leave No Trace. This is the link for it, or you can use the QR code. It's not but 3 questions, and it won't take you but a minute to do it. But what I thought we might do is take the quiz, and I'm not necessarily interested in your score. What I'm interested in is, did you do as well as you thought you would, or did you do better than you thought you would? What did you think about the quiz itself? And I'm going to go ahead and give you a little forewarning. I did not do well on this the first time I took it, but I'm going to give you a second to do that. And we'll pull up the chat and just post in the chat, or you're welcome to discuss what you thought about the quiz.
Kristie, do you have a chance? I mean, I know that you have the QR code, but do you have a link that you can drop in as well, or no?
Yes, I've got it here. I'll copy in.
Thank you.
Whoa, wait a minute. I hope it'll let me copy it. What if I do this? Nope, that's not hard.
It's okay.
Here,
if not.
I will type it in.
Okay, we can officially say that I thought I would do well on it, and I sucked.
That's what I thought too. That's exactly what I thought. Let's see if that works.
Yeah, I got 0.
Okay. I think I got 1, but I think what I noticed was that I had an understanding of the concepts, but I had no real clue about the numbers. The numbers were very specific. And that's the thing about the Leave No Trace organization. I highly recommend their website. They have lots of these little quizzes. They have lots of little free courses that you can take and do quizzes at the end to become more environmentally literate, to know what it means to leave no trace and to be a good steward while you're outside. But they are sticklers about the numbers. They have the receipts, as they say. So I've had to take some of the quizzes multiple times just because, like I said, I had an idea of the concept, but I didn't know the numbers. And so one of the things that this demonstrated to me is that, yeah, exactly how much more environmentally literate I can become and how much I can learn. Okay. So what I did was I talked to some science teachers at my school. And I asked them to tell me what they thought about the current status of environmental literacy at our school. And again, like I said, I'm in South Carolina. And we're in a small town in a rural county, but we're close enough to some metropolitan areas that we can get there. But the students that I teach, like I said, are a small town, and their families have been here for multiple generations. So I wanted you to take a second and look at the comments. These are direct quotations that they sent me about what they thought about environmental literacy with our particular set of students. And I wanted to see if you saw the same thing in your students. And it may be very different because that your students may be in a place that's very active environmentally, whereas mine's not. So I'm gonna give you a couple minutes to look at what they told me.
I'm just reading through these and reacting to them. And I think it's really interesting that you have science teachers who don't have a clue how greenhouse effect works. Wow. That's kind of scary to think about.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that they told me, I asked them about standards. And in South Carolina, biology is the only science class at the high school level that is tested statewide as an EOC at end of course exam. And what they told me is that there is one standard in biology that deals with ecology. Now, we do offer an environmental science course. We've had an AP course before. It doesn't usually make. But we know that the attention is going to go where the testing is. And so the attention goes to those biology standards that are being tested. But again, obviously the students aren't getting much outside of school either, based on the quote, especially this one about they're not willing to explain it. Once they learn it at school, they're not willing to explain it to their families or encourage them to their families. And there's lots of reasons we can look at for this, why this might happen. I mean, clearly we all have short attention spans now, so it's easy to catch on to something on social media and then let it go next week. But there's also possibly the sense of echo fatigue. They've just heard it so much that they've just kind of brushed it off and not taken it seriously. But they also may fundamentally lack the schema, the background knowledge to know the difference between landfill and a landfill, even though they might take things to the landfill. So I thought that was pretty discouraging. But again, that is also an opportunity for us because we can start filling in some of those gaps no matter what course we teach. So what do the researchers say? The researchers say that many students do experience eco anxiety. They're freaked out by the doomsday prophecies, or they're burnt out from being told so many disaster stories. And they also say that teen activism is spurred by peer groups or social media, not necessarily us, which or their parents. But that doesn't mean we're powerless either. We'll get to that. And that students gain information about environmental issues, but their affective attachment to those issues seems to dwindle as they age. That they start out as youngsters very excited about what they can do for the environment. But by the time they get to 16, that affection has dwindled. But that's pretty much the case with teenagers on just about anything. We know how they can be cynical. But they also have shown that schools with environmental ed programs produce better informed students. And what I have found in my research is that almost all of the research centers on young kids from 4 to 8. The research on outdoor ed, on place-based learning, on experiential learning, it's all on those early years and not so much in the high school. So I really see this as an opening for us to maybe rekindle some of the affective connections to the environment that they lose by being behind a screen all the time and, doing AI-driven curricula for testing. But the National Environment Education Foundation reported, this is about America as a whole, reported in 2015 that Americans score 48 out of 100 in their environmentally friendly behaviors, 57 out of 100 in their attitudes toward the environment, and 51 out of 100 on being environmentally informed. So yeah, I don't know that my students are much different than a lot of other students. If this is the way America is as a whole. But the overall trends they see in the USA is that a lot of times Americans see economics as oppositional to environmentally sound behavior, that economic growth might be opposite of environmentally friendly behavior. And we're not necessarily convinced of the effects of energy saving options. And that may be this because it's long term, we don't see immediate effects. But ironically, we increasingly participate in some kind of green behaviors. Like the more it's spoken, the more we participate. But the idea that it costs more to be environmentally sound or ethical is a barrier to environmentally ethical behavior. So that is an opening for our economics teachers, that they can look at that dilemma. So what can we do? What can we do with these grim situations? Well, there's a lot we can do. So first, I kind of like to talk about some overall, I keep doing that. Some overall guidelines for environmental literacy that are helpful for our secondary students. The first is we need to try to keep the instruction personally relevant, connected to a student's immediate existence. For example, in my town, we recently have this huge tract of land that's just been cleared for new houses. And there's been all kind of debates on social media about that. But we have a lot of hunters and farmers in our area, and they're going to be concerned about what happened to that wildlife there. Where have the deer gone? Where have the turkeys gone in these hundreds of acres that have been cleared? And if they build 500 houses here, that's going to mean more restaurants, and that's going to displace our animal population. So that is an aspect that I could use in class, regardless of what discipline I teach, to make it relevant to them, how decisions today affect us. The second thing, and this goes right along with it, it's better if it's local, if it's something they can see, hear, feel, taste, touch right there. And another example from my area is kudzu. And if y'all don't know about kudzu, kudzu is an invasive vine that was brought to help slow erosion, and it does. But it doesn't stop there. It just keeps growing. And my students can walk out of our school and go and touch kudzu. They can see kudzu, but they may not know how it was brought to the South. They may not know what it was for. They just know that it's a pain in our rears right now. So like I could start with, let's look at what the kudzu problem is in our area. And that would be a local way to get them interested in environmental issues. Another thing we need to keep in mind is we need to try our best to stay positive and proactive to avoid all the doomsday prophecies, because we know the mental damage that doom scrolling does to all of us. We don't need to, contribute to that. And people can, if they hear the doomsday stuff, they can feel helpless and powerless, and that's right, the opposite of what we want. We want them to feel empowered, that they can make a change in their personal lives that have effects. And if it doesn't make them feel powerless, there's some that have heard it so much that they think we're hyperbolizing, and so they just kind of brush it off. So let's focus in on what we can do immediately, whether it might be gardening or cleanup or whatever that we can do ourselves for our area, that is positive and proactive, where we see results. And that leads us to the last one, which is student agency. Because if students are acting on something that's not in their hearts, like if they're cleaning up the road in front of the school to get beta club service hours, they're going to do it, but it's probably not going to stick. They're probably not going to do it after that. So we want to focus in on things that they're interested in, where they can make the choice. So it's not a teacher telling them to do it. Like I was saying, they're influenced by their peer groups. So if it's something that they're naturally interested in, something that's close to their hearts, then it's more likely to last, rather than us telling them what they should do. But overall, there's a couple of things we need to think about. One good strain that goes through it all is if we focus in on the interrelatedness of all living creatures and not a particular policy or position, because that's where we get into trouble with cultural values, and we let the kids choose things that are personally interested and focus in on how humans and plants and animals are interconnected. And the next one seems obvious, but I think it's worth pointing out. Just like in any teaching endeavor, the more we know our students, the better we can help them find an area of environmentalism that matters to them. Let me give you an example. Also in my town, a huge number of our students are actively involved in their churches, and allowing them to look at environmental issues through a religious lens is going to be personally meaningful for them, but it's also going to allow them to select a position that's not going to get them in trouble, shall we say, with their family and then their churches and stuff, which is an issue where I live. But let me give you another example. My younger son is a junior at the University of Virginia at the Beckley campus. He's not at the main one. He's at the Beckley campus. And if you know anything about Beckley, West Virginia, that's right where the newest national park is, the New River Gorge. It's ridiculously beautiful, and it's just amazing. But it is also in the heart of coal country. So anyone who's going to teach or advocate for environmental literacy in Beckley is going to have to reckon with these seemingly opposing ideals of this national park and preservation, and the damage that coal does. And knowing who the students are and their families' backgrounds and stuff is going to help the teacher pick the right pathway in addressing environmental literacy. And it's going to help students take it personally, build those affective connections. So here's where I thought we would do next. I thought, let's do a little experiment before we start talking about the outdoor classroom. I thought we might build a word cloud, and I'll participate too, so we can get some more. But and I can let's see, put that link in the chat box as well, or you can do it. But you can put up to 10 words. But what I want you to do is think about what you have seen today. What stands out in your memory that you have seen today? And let's build a word cloud with that. There's HTTP. Let's see it. There it is. let's see if that works. Yes, Dr. Morrison, that's a good point, that families that depend on oil companies for their livelihoods, that's going to be an issue that you have to be aware of as a teacher. All right, so let me pull up the.
Did you want to share your screen on this? When I'm pulling this up, I'm not getting the actual.
You're not getting the list? Like
Yeah, no, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm getting create your own mentee.
Oh,
Oh, there we go. Now I've got it.
okay. Let's do. Can you see it right now? Let's see. I
I
have too much
don't
on
see
my
the
screen.
Mentimeter, so if you want to try shifting it, it might be that you need to share screen and not just the.
Oh, yes, yes. Okay. Well, yeah. It's popping up though. All right, now let me see if I can get it where to. Is it not showing? Hang on, y'all. I'm coming. I'm coming. I'm coming.
Well, maybe we dictate to you and you put it in and we see what grows.
Okay.
I've got it up, so if
Now I
anybody
see it
wants to
now. Now
holler
I've
them
got what
out,
I've got to do is.
I say I've got it up, so if anybody wants to just yell it out, I can add to the list. What would you like me to add onto the list? So it's asking for words that represent what we thought of today or what we saw we've
Seeing
seen
today,
so
yeah.
far.
I feel like the people that know me know which words I put on there.
I have seen the television screen. I have seen my window. But I did see my back porch. I mean, I sat on my back porch. I've seen the computer screen a lot.
Swinging tree
I've
leaves.
seen computer screen a lot too.
Yeah, a whole lot. My husband says he's probably gonna have to bury me with the laptop because it's with me all the time. Okay.
Painted toenails.
Hmm?
Painted toenails.
Oh yeah, that's nice. That's a nice image. Okay. So what do you notice about how we're spending our time, how we're spending our days?
Well, computer screen is pretty big and in the center right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I worry about, what I think about is like when we're in the virtual world so much, the days fade into weeks, fade into months, and we don't have memorable moments. We don't have they just fade into each other. And unless something startling happens, the days just pass by without much memorable happening. And that's a problem with learning because we want our learning to be memorable. So what makes memorable learning? I'm going to argue that memorable learning occurs through shared experiences in the physical world, more so than the abstract virtual world. Now, I mean, like if somebody started stripping right here or something, that would be memorable. But for the most part, we remember when we are physically involved, when we have something that we can see, hear, smell, taste, or touch. So let me get back to my PowerPoint. All right. So there's a few things I think we should recognize before we talk about why we should go outside. Studies have shown that as we get older, we tend to spend less time outside, and that teens today that are in school right now have spent less time outside than previous generations. And we tend to spend less time outside in correlation with the more time we spend behind a screen. There's a balance there. The more time behind the screen, usually the less time outside. And these trends affect the way we learn. And going outside is not going to make them go away, but I think they will mitigate some of the negative effects that this situation brings to learning. And we all know what kind of damage the pandemic's done. And even now, we're just trying to figure out why. But what's happened from the education world standpoint is they've moved the other way. When we said we have an opportunity to change the way we do schools, well, no, we went backwards. And we are focusing more on standardization, more test data-driven instruction, and we're seeing less room for innovative practices, except for AI. We're encouraged, to do some innovative things with that, but less time for original creating. And what's happening to students now in the post-pandemic world is that they are totally digitally immersed. And sometimes they become overly reliant on AI. But the thing is that they are creating outside of school. They're creating digitally like mad outside of school. But the literacies they're using outside is not corresponding to the school-based literacies. And what we're seeing is less human interaction. I don't know if y'all have seen this in your classrooms or not, but I've seen students come in, sit down, they'll have the laptop open, they'll have their phones open, and there won't be conversations going on. And that's one of the ways the outdoor classroom can help us. An outdoor classroom day as sponsored by this outdoor classroom organization for the spring is May 23rd. If you want to look that up, it's Outdoor Classroom Day. I'll put that in the chat room too, but the QR code is there.
I got it, Kristie. I'll type it in. You keep
Thank
going.
you. And I before I talk about the things that I've done, I have to acknowledge my privilege. My current principal and my principal before now have both been extremely supportive of my idea of the outdoor classroom. Their position was, if it gets them actively engaged and creating, go for it. So I've been very blessed in that respect, and I know that not all administrators are like that. And I also have to acknowledge that my school was blessed with plenty of green space. We have courtyards. I can take them out to the track. We have our cross-country track, which is just a huge wooded area right across the street from the school. So I have lots of green space, and my current principal is opening to creating an amphitheater. He's all on it. So I am in a very privileged situation. I know that there are schools that don't have those, but there is absolutely a movement to give more green spaces, to get a green space in every school. And if you're interested in that, I would suggest you look at the Children and Nature Network. They have lots of accessible research on why we need, if you're interested in arguing why we need green spaces at schools, the research is there. But why do we want to do outdoor learning? Well, one is some of the studies are showing that if we learn to love our locality, our personal space here, then that usually translates into bigger earth love. A lot of outdoor enthusiasts and researchers credit their love and their concern for the environment starting with a local, a personal local experience, whether it's recreation or whether it's gardening or something like that. We build a desire to protect our local land, and that translates. It hurts us when we see other places that aren't being protected as well. Besides that, it's good for us. It's good for our mental and physical health. And what the studies have shown is like, if students are bogged down and they get up and walk, it helps restore their attention. But if they get up and walk outside, it does an even better job of restoring their attention. And what the research has also found is that walking outside together fosters conversations, casual conversations that don't necessarily take place in the classroom. So when we walk outside together, we get a chance to get to know each other better. And students that might not likely talk to each other in the classroom will talk to each other outside. And that helps the teacher because we know our students better. But it also helps with the classroom community in terms of writing and creating together. And if they build a trust while they're walking outside, it might facilitate some more collaboration inside. And so here are a few things that I've done. And we'll talk about how they can be adapted as well. This over here, you see your pictures of where we did string journals. And this I learned at Approaching Walden at the Walden Woods Project. But I printed out their names and laminated them. And they chose a spot out on our cross country trail that they wanted to return to every single time. And their purpose in ELA class was description, observation, sensory details. And by the end of the semester, they had a very Thomas Jeffersonian kind of book here of what that spot looked like from August to December. And so then they created something, and we did QR codes there at that spot. They created some audio visual kind of thing where you could access it through the QR codes. But that's ELA. In science class, you could, the purpose could be to practice what an ornithologist does, listening for birds or drawing birds or identifying plants or what happens to a particular plant over time. We could learn local history this way. We could use in our world languages, we could use it to learn what these different things are in nature and their corresponding Spanish word, for example. And definitely like geography, we could look, or geology, we could look at what living creatures are there and how, like in my case, what about this landscape indicates that we're living in the foothills kind of thing. We have done literary egg hunts, but that is applicable to any type of subject. I've done a couple different things, but the idea is you put something content-based information in the egg along with candy, because they want candy. And then they have to find the eggs and bring them back and somehow put them together. Like I had them, each egg had a different line of a poem, and they had to try to put the poem back together. Or they had a literary term, a definition, and an example, and they had to put it back together. But you could do that with like a math equation and an answer. Bring them back together. You could do it with questions of the content, or the chemistry element of a table of the periodic table of elements, like the symbol and the element kind of thing. So any kind of content that you could pair up in the eggs. We also did blood pressure checks, and this sounds like it should be in a science a class, but we read an article about forest bathing, and our school nurse helped us out. She took each student's blood pressure before and then blood pressure after, and then they took the data anonymously and analyzed it. We have done art creations based on things that we found in nature. We have collected, these are bones, and we never could figure out what this is, some kind of jawbone of an animal, and we're still not sure exactly what it was, but they picked different things to bring back for our class collections, which clearly can be applied in terms of art or science. And if you look at the resource list, there are tons of ideas of how you can take the content outside. Here's where they're putting together the things that they got out of the eggs, putting together the literary terms, that part there. But the point is that they are physically touching something and working together outdoors. And that's where the collaboration comes in, and that's where the community comes in, and affection for these memorable moments that hopefully are inspire affection. But again, we all know that not all of us have supportive administration like that, and sometimes the weather doesn't help us out. So what do we do when we have to stay inside? There's lots of things we can do. This is an idea just on research. And these are some questions that I came up with that have to do with things that are personally relevant to our students, but we can do this in any classroom, and they don't have to be long-term research questions, like do a whole research paper. Like the first question, where does my candy bar come from? I did that when we did our first literary egg hunt because it was close to Easter. And so I had several different articles about where our chocolate comes from. And so they had to read those and come up with conclusions before they did the Easter egg hunt to find the candy kind of thing. But that would apply to an economics class. That would apply to a geography class, like where's it coming from? And of course, a science class. Here's another one. Should I buy that $6 dress from Shein or Temu? That would definitely apply to economics and geography again. I saw somebody post about tiny houses just today, a former student of mine, talking about how you make fun of somebody who lives in a trailer park, but you're posting ideas for your tiny house. That's a classist. They said that's a classist accusation or viewpoint there. So we get if they're interested in that, that would be a very interesting way to look at economics and what's driving the tiny house market and why is it chic to do so, but it's not supposedly chic to live in a trailer park. Again, my students want to know why are the coyotes in my backyard in the suburb in the city, and the hunters want to know what's happened to the turkeys and the deer. Should I buy a real or fake Christmas tree? Again, that could be economics, that could be geography, that could be a cultural study, that could be, and any of these obviously would work in our world language classes. We would just look at it from a language point. Our government classes, we could look at things about like how the UN addresses issues. I think I've got it on the next one, but addresses issues like environmental damage. You know, if an oil tanker explodes somewhere, how governments respond to that. I mean, some other approaches that you can do inside. One of the things I did was I focused in on inductive reasoning with songs about the earth. And I did this just this last April, like a year ago. I gave them like 8 or 10 songs. We did one song a day and we listened to the song, and they were from very different genres. They went from Alabama to Michael Jackson to some rap songs, from Big Yellow Taxi, all those. And we listened to a song, and I had a big bulletin board paper. And I was like, okay, what do you notice about the song? So we looked at each song individually. And when we got through with 8 or 10 of them, I had them look at the bulletin board paper. And I was like, okay, what conclusions can you draw from what you've noticed? So the focus is on inductive reasoning, but at the same time, they're getting all of this information about environmental issues. And some of them were surprised to know that their favorite artist had something to say about environmentalism. Artifactual endeavors like trash art. I collected where I'd bring them snacks. I'd collect like, Pop-Tart boxes and cracker boxes. And then we created trash art. Now that's clearly an artistic thing, but it can be done. It can be done in our world language classes or our ELA classes. We also did plastic crochet, but the idea again of having something physical, we took plastic bags and we brought one of our science teachers' aunts came in to teach us how to crochet using the plastic bags. We've done indoor planting. Like what I did was we did several different types of articles or text about seeds, and then we planted the seeds. And so we looked at seeds as a metaphor. But again, that would work in an economics class and a geology or geography class where you're looking at what's happening to modern farming and where are seeds going and that kind of thing. And if you're an ELA teacher, if you're restricted to a particular curriculum, you can simply read the literature from an environmental focus. For instance, when we read House on Mango Street, I have my students keep class list of the images she uses. And one of them, it would be natural imagery, like the clouds. That's one of the images I remember. And there's a whole chapter about how this garden grows back up over the cars and things. So looking at it from an environmental focus, and they keep these notes, and they say, okay, so what is the writer saying about our relationship with nature? So just bringing it out in the content that we're already teaching. So, but why should we start with Earth Day? Well, because it's fun. Earth Day, Earth Month, has a celebratory nature to it that takes away some of that doomsday issue. It's a way to celebrate the earth and our relationship to the earth. And most likely there are lots of local activities available. Here where I am, there are several things going on this weekend that I can attend and get ideas to bring back to my classroom. Earth Day's adaptable to any class. We can look at, again, from a UN perspective, from a geology perspective or geography. How is it being celebrated around the world? What are government bodies doing about environmental issues? We can look at it historically. It helps our U.S. history teachers out if I study some modern things like this in history, because they have a hard time getting to those before the EOC. And we all know how crazy schedules get in April and May, when you've got testing and you've got awards programs and you have field trips and you have like we have prom bash and all these other things going on. So it's really hard to do a cohesive unit, but you can do these individual lessons that center an environmental focus, but at the same time feed your content, and they kind of work in that patchwork way when you're working with a patchwork schedule. And don't forget about Arbor Day. It's April 26th, right at the end of the week. There are lots of things we can do with Arbor Day and Earth Day together. So it's usually a fun way to start, and it's relevant. The students will see it on their social media, and so it brings in that local and immediate aspect to it. So, and that leads us to where can you go for more information? Dr. Morrison will help me pull up the resources. There are tons out there, and the more I get into it, the more I see. And again, most of it is focused in on the 4-year-olds to 8-year-olds, but it doesn't mean we can't take an activity and apply it to our content. But so now I'm interested in hearing from you. I'm interested in hearing your challenges and your ideas, and what you might like to add to our conversation.
First of all, thank you so much. This was very invigorating amidst massive piles of grading. So,
Oh,
well,
yes, yes, that's the other thing about April and May. Yes.
so, but it makes me what you share. It makes me also think, what if we could have students, and if you do some, creative writing, or like not even with a topic, but sit outside, listen for a minute, and then write what that triggers in you.
Yes.
Just 3-4 minutes or something. But if they get used to it and get an opportunity to engage in that, then we might get them into writing for life, just as a helpful journaling of what's going through them.
And there's a great picture book called Listen. And when I do an activity like that, I read the book and I'm like, okay, just sit still. Let's start for 30 seconds. Can you sit still and close your eyes and just listen, kind of thing? Yeah. So it helps them in terms of learning to sit still without sound. And also, yes, personal journaling and mental health. That's a great idea. Yes.
Kristie, you can stop sharing if you'd like.
Okay.
And I went ahead and put your resources in there, so I don't know if there's anything that you would like to say about the resources.
What I've done is I've included websites. Let's see if I can pull it up. Yeah, this is because I added some to it just today. No, that's not what I want. Let me just pull it up. I did, like I said, some websites, and on some of those websites, there's some webinars that you can sign up for, and I've listed where those are. Let me go back to Well, anyway, so I've got these websites that are different organizations, but then I've also got a couple of things listed with webinars that you can sign up, and I have a separate set for Earth Day and Arbor Day sources if you're interested in looking for those. But I've also listed some podcasts, and some of those I'll put a note on there. Some of those have episodes that are great for a class. Some of them are not. Some of them are for adults, but they have some great ideas that you can use. The Outside Magazine podcast does have some things that you could use in class as well. I mean, there's some other ones that have some too that you might like. Wild Ideas Worth Living. I know that comes from REI, and so it's commercialized, but they have some really good stories that you could use in class. And then I have some books. The books that I've listed are they're almost all practical guides for teachers that are working right now. There's a couple of research-based ones, but I mean, not that the practical ones aren't, but the ones that are practical are activities that you can use. And then there's some research ones too. And then I've included my information and 2 articles that I've written that go into a little more detail of a couple of things I've talked about in my email. If you want to send me an email.
And I was going to say, and Kristie's going to be putting a blog up on our website here in the next week or so. So that will help to it. There was something else that I was going to say, and it went in my head and right back out again. Oh, I was going to say Peace Corps. At some point, the Peace Corps did a lot of lesson plans and things, many of which were based in farming and things like that. So also, I know you want to start local, and one of the things you talked about local, but also understanding that local, expands and is reflective of and can be generalized to the global as well, I think is also important.
And if you're using Peace Corps research, that would be perfect for a social studies class, whether it's economics or government or, world history. What is the role of the Peace Corps? And here's something that they've done. Yeah, that would be great.
This just makes me think of what I used to work for the Peace Corps in a particular, for 2 years, not in another country, but in my native country. And then I had people from all over the world come together. And so, and I had to teach them in their field, everything in German, so they could work with researchers in sites. So it's a little flipped from what the US does, but what if we could do, like the Montessori games do, you get to touch substances. You can't see them, but you touch them. And you have to go through experience of figuring out what that is, if it's wet soil or clumped clay or a leaf, in a particular state, or a pine cone or whatever it is, and then go through these associations to actually develop a connection from a sensory point of view before you go in your brain, and then go from there. And what I found was that people from certain countries, if I didn't do something like that, hands-on feeling, touching, smelling, they couldn't learn. They could not put the pieces together. But when I did that, when I put them outside on a tree and figure out where's the shade side, where is the sunny side, what does that mean about what grows on the outside of the tree? Is that a fungus or what is that? That's when they came on board, but not the other. So I think we have more students that could wake up to that discovery away from the screen. And so I know it may be just a mini idea, but I'm looking for little things I can do that are a little aha moment that gets them to open up to something else. So,
and I think it's interesting to think about like how that experiential learning is different in different places, because I know when so we moved from Maryland to Nevada, and then from Nevada back to Charlotte. And it was funny because when we moved back to Charlotte and my mom was asking me like, how are things going? And I'm like, you know what I didn't realize I missed until I had it again. She's like, what? I'm like, mud. I missed the smell of mud because when you're in Nevada, it's desert and you don't have that. But when we came back to Charlotte, it was like that to me was springtime because it was the smell of mud. And it seems so silly and strange, but it was such an association that I had. And it was such a you know, a hallmark for a particular time period for me. Having grown up on the East Coast, and then when I no longer had it, it just it felt different. So
Yeah, exactly. I agree. I
yeah,
totally agree. Yes. Yes.
yeah. Other questions or things that we have for Kristie while we have her for another minute or two? You're muted, Elkie.
I noticed. Where are you going next with your interest in expanding this topic that you're obviously so passionate about?
Oh, thank you. Yes, I am. I am working on my data collection for my dissertation right now. I will go into the classroom tomorrow. I'm going into my neighbor's classroom, and I'm doing at least 8 different lessons outdoors, and I'm looking specifically on how the outdoor lesson affects their writing practices and their attitudes toward writing. The first one we did was I was just showing them around, and we practiced observation and description. But tomorrow we're going to read an excerpt from Amy Nesukumatothel's World of Wonders, and she talks about capturing fireflies in a jar. And she wants memories. She wants to capture them she wants to capture the memories like fireflies in a jar. So I've got some canisters, and I'm going to ask them to pick something that they want to create for the memory jar for the class and then write about it. And then I'm really excited about Thursday. We're gonna do the book, the picture book word collector, and I'm gonna ask them to list words that they love, and then they're gonna go find rocks, and we're gonna paint the rocks and put those words on them and create a rock garden. But then the lesson after that, we're gonna read the excerpt from Secret Life of Bees about the Wailing Wall, and I'm gonna have them use the rock garden as the Wailing Wall. And so it's a series of lessons where they are physically interacting, they have a text, and then they write. And so I'm examining what happens to their writing over these lessons.
That sounds fascinating. Go for it. Go for it, girl. Do it.
And it is just absolutely amazing. I had another teacher who wanted to come watch me do it on our first lesson. And he said, I have never seen my students react that way. He said they were childlike, they talked, they interacted. And he's like, they come into the class and shut down. And so my whole theory is that the classroom, the artifacts in the classroom are connected to expectations of academic learning, and those, not many students feel affection toward those artifacts. We take them out of that environment, then we take them out of that pressure of that academic expectation, and look what happens.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I love that.
I put a book reference in case you don't know about it yet that is related to, this is a collection of research on what basically happens to the brain and the whole human being when from a young age on kids are overexposed to screen reading.
I haven't read that one, but I've read a couple, but I'll get to that one. Thank you.
Is that The Reader Come Back by Marianne Wolf?
Reader Come Home.
Reader Come Home.
Yeah,
Oh, Come Home. Okay.
Did I write it wrong?
Yeah, it's okay.
Oh, I did. I did.
Come home in my
Come home.
house. I just haven't read it yet.
I got it.
Come
I'll
home.
go ahead. I'll fix it in here. So it's
Thank you.
Reader
It's
Come
Reader Come Home by Marianne
Home by
Wolf.
Marianne Wolf.
And
All right,
she goes so far as to, if we overdo this, we are raising children that are not able to be compassionate community members. They can't relate to people, and so it's important to do, when you do reading, to do the emotional connection. So why not do it outside as well and have that human connection and that maybe nature connection, I want to add, then we can, I think, go really far.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much, Kristie. We really appreciate it. What I'd like to have everybody do is I'm going to grab the link here and drop this in. This link is for our evaluation. This is one of the ways that, hang on, let me just grab it, the survey. This is one of the ways that, for our grant that we obviously have to, oops, hang on a minute. That we have to do. So we would really appreciate it if everybody would just take a second in order to do this. I think, hang on a minute, did I grab, I think I grabbed the wrong one. I
I'm
cannot,
really excited.
I
about
cannot talk and copy at the same
That's
time.
okay. That's why I made the title the mistake. I can't listen and write at the same time.
Exactly. So if you can take a couple of minutes in order to just fill out this survey, it's really helpful for us in order to be able to get that feedback so that we can then, grow from it. It helps us to know what other people might want to see for our webinars, and for us to continue to get funding from the South Carolina Middle Grade Initiative. So we appreciate that. All right. Thank you so much, Kristie. We really appreciate it all. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording. And we're going to